Hello and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host for the show, and today's podcast is going to be featuring former MP Cheryl Hardcastle. She's a longtime ally for PWD in Canada, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Cheryl to our show. Welcome, Cheryl. How are you?
I'm great. Hi, Brent. Good to be with you guys. Good to be with you and talk about the journey of the Canada Disability Benefit.
We were joking off there that it's the first time you've had to make sure you do your hair because we're on video. Because you're so used to the Twitter Spaces, right? Where it's just
right.
audio.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is a little bit different, eh?
Yeah. I got to make sure hair day when I'm starting the show too, is make sure no piece standing up on end.
I know, it's just distracting. No matter how interesting you are, if there's like a piece of hair hanging up, everybody's watching.
Yeah, sometimes I say it's a bad hair day, and so Cheryl, it's great having you on, and with the Bill C-22, the Canada Disability Benefit Act has now been passed through Senate, has now received royal assent. So going forward, what is the adventure with that bill, with the new act now?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to it, isn't there? Like we collectively, allies and people living with disabilities, we know there's a need for it. So there's a lot of frustration. If you're somebody in my role and who's been a member of parliament, who's been the critic for people with disabilities, just, for the background for your listeners here too, like I was a member of the NDP caucus and the critic for people with disabilities when the Accessible Canada Act was tabled. So I did my homework there. I tabled 93 amendments, and I think like 6 of them went through because they were amendments from other parties. But my point with that is that I did my homework. I saw how important it is to have strong legislative language. And I think that is something that we're really seeing when we watched the journey of Bill C-22. All of the critics that were taking that academic approach, right?
Yeah.
Not the emotional approach, the academic approach. You see very weak language. And if you're a legislative mind, you say, this is weak language. It is not going to make a difference if you don't strengthen the language. So with my background, I was frustrated because I thought, like, you should have done a lot of the background work and had this strong language ready. On the other hand, being hopeful, knowing we do need this benefit, it's hard. No, who can argue? No one's going to argue against it. We do need it. There is one advocate, one gentleman on social media who has a hashtag that is trending now to the aid before MAiD. And that's not something we've delved into a lot here, but it really is very insensitive to be moving forward on articulating the needs for medical assistance in dying, which is necessary. But at the same time, it's not an either or. You need to be doing this. Disability benefit is needed, and you need to expedite this process too. So for us to have seen how slow it went, Like the first time it was tabled, and then we had the election in 2021. And then we came back, like nothing. There's not even any tweaking of language. Like no one was doing any work in between. That's what it felt like, right? It felt like you didn't listen to the...
I don't know about you, Cheryl, or I don't know about you, Brent, but right when the pandemic first hit, remember here in BC, it was almost like every day they'd have John Horgan or Adrian Dix stand up and with the health authority person, they stand up and give a debrief for the day on the numbers for COVID, and they'd say, so many people in hospital and these many people died today. And I mean, it was a really emotional thing, and I don't mean to minimize it or belittle it or anything, but what really struck me was, they're saying, isn't this sad that we lost, that X amount of people died today? And I'm thinking to myself, well, it's kind of hypocritical, because here you are, like, crying these tears, and I mean, they're real tears. I'm not trying to minimize.
Yeah,
but yet they're like all these years of, like, say the drug supply issue and people dying on the streets, and then you have, like, basically 30 years. Like we talk about 1,000 days for this. We talk about 1,000 days for this thing, but it's been 30 years of legislated poverty for people with disabilities. And people have died. Right? People have died, like, and there was no cheers for that.
Yeah,
and it just seems like very hypocritical.
Yeah, exactly. It's hypocritical. You see it that way because this is preventable. Every day you're making a decision to not act on this, but then this comes along and you act on it. We're not saying you shouldn't act on it, but it's proving to us that you can. You're proving that you're capable, and again and again and again. And as a patriot, as a proud Canadian, that is the biggest frustration for me too. We are capable. We are capable of doing much better than this. We are capable of rolling out a Canada Disability benefit that does meet the rigorous standards that we need for strong legislation. There's expertise in this ministry. Don't kid yourself. This language is weak in an intentional way, right? You don't want to be cynical, but you say, why? So what's the point of this, using this language? And we did hear from Minister Qualtrough at several different opportunities in testimony, whether it was to the Senate or to the Social Development Committee. It has a longer name in the House of Commons that dealt with the Canada Disability benefit. Minister Qualtrough said, this is flexible language because we need to be flexible in the regulation. We've got to be collaborative and work with the provinces and the territories, and we have to be nimble. And that was, she didn't say nimble, that's my words, but like saying it like we have to be flexible and responsive. That's the reason for the weaker language. I don't believe that's necessary. Even now, since it got royal assent on June 22nd, Bill C-22 already, in her interviews about it, Minister Qualtrough's already moved away from the 12-month timeline for the legislation to 18 months.
Wow.
And there are people saying, she's already saying that, and there are people saying, no, that's in the legislation now. No, what's in the legislation, and that's we'll probably have to talk about that too, this idea of our sources and news. So the language of C-22 is they have a year for it to come into force. And then after that, you have a year for the regulation to be fashioned. Wow. And it's just semantics. For it to come into force means it's real. We have it, and we're doing that regulation process now.
Mm-hmm.
So they can go and meet with the provinces. Each province has to be dealt with on the issue of clawbacks. It is true. It's going to be tricky, but I think to not talk about it up front, I think each of us in our provinces need to be focusing on our provincial governments now, and the critics in our opposition parties. We're a democracy, a robust democracy in Canada. And it's time to turn our attention to the provinces and say, exactly what is it that the federal government is afraid of? They're afraid that if they promise me $2,000 a month, that you're going to walk away from me as a province, that you're not going to kick in your share? How is that? Like, is that what's going to happen? What are they? I think we need to have those discussions openly to the provinces, like why this issue of clawback.
And to share my I've shared my story a lot, actually, but like my survivor's pension is being clawed back for the last 10 years. And in 10 years, it's been about $65,000 worth of clawbacks from the provincial government in those 10 years. But, you know, I have to fully admit, like, you know, at the start of it, like going back 10 years ago, like I was completely naive. Like when I got my first check from the ministry, and I saw all this money being taken off, I go, surely that's got to be a mistake.
Yeah.
Like I thought, well, surely the government's not that cruel that they would do that. So it's got to be a mistake. I just thought somebody, you know, some calculator farted a mistake or something. So I phoned and I asked, like, I think there's been an error here. Like I was completely naive, right? And they're like, no, this is on purpose, you know. So like, okay, so you know, and then so that you, to your point, I mean, it's so important to get the language right. It's so important to get really dialed down and like anchor everything down and make sure everything's proper, because you don't want this money to disappear on clawbacks, right?
Well, what I'm concerned about too is about the insurance. They're saying about the private insurance companies can actually technically claw it back from provincial.
Well, is that and I guess one of the ideas with that amendment, why you can't do that. I mean, I really felt bad for the Senate. They really, I thought they did great with standing up and really addressing the weaknesses in this bill. I thought it was pretty brave to take on that amendment specifically for the insurance clawbacks and to actually talk about the constitutionality of it. There are several senators that were really articulate about that. And it does get technical and legal, and it does intimidate people, and then it confuses them, right? But the whole idea that it was called for to have that amendment, and then that it went through without, like, so they're going to do this in regulation. Is that where the language is going to go? You're going to do this in legislation, or is each province going to have some kind of an agreement with an insurance company? All these insurance companies that do business in each province, they're going to have to deal, like, I'm hoping, I'm trying to be hopeful, because there's nothing more frustrating. And thanks for sharing your story with us, Neil. There's so many people that try and get ahead a little bit, and you can't. In the and that's those of though, and I know I've mentioned it in this kind of forum before, but I'll say it again. When people share their own stories publicly like this, it really, really helps a lot of people who can't help it. They want to be allies, but this is personal financial information that is not shared otherwise. If you didn't share that with us, Neil, for people who share with us on social media, they'll share their this is my Ontario disability pension check, and this is how much I get for rent, and this is how much I get for this and that. When people share that information, then when we talk about legislated poverty, a lot of people who want to be allies, but they're not up to full speed with their knowledge about how it works, like you were even, Neil, thinking this must be a mistake. No, you are clawed back. There is absolutely no incentive for a person living with a disability who can work maybe 15 hours a week and get down the stairs, get accommodations at an employer with public transportation, pack a lunch, all that kind of stuff. It's for them to, if they can do it, great. But that money is clawed back after, like, you can only make $200.
Well,
I don't know, what's a bus pass in your community, like, or a taxi? Because where I am, the transit for like full accessibility transit, like you got to give them a couple weeks notice. If you're on call for work, I don't know how many people have that experience with an employer. Sometimes you get called, like, can you be in for 6 tomorrow? Can you be in, and if you can't, they just stop calling you. So to be employed, like, there's so much more to it. And anyway, I forget how we got off on that tangent about it, but the idea of these clawbacks, this regulatory environment that we have right now is hurting people. And this is the frustration for people in the know. C-22 is needed, but when we see the language, we're just itching. We're just frustrated. Like, you need this language to be stronger. And this idea that, oh, we left it that way because we're going to deal with it in the regulations. Okay, now we have to count on that. That's the point we're at now. So now that it's received that royal assent, now we have to let that back room kind of work happen, which is what a lot of people did not like.
And a lot of people are nervous because, I mean, we have a precedent really with the CRPD, right? Or where Canada signed on to the CRPD, and nothing's happened with it, right?
No, we don't.
You signed on to it, but it's like crickets. So it's why sign on to it if you're not going to do anything? If you're not actually going to do it, why sign on to it?
All the senators, I mean, they had all pretty well all agreed, like at first, and then it get handed right back to the House of Commons, and it was supposed to be announced on the Tuesday. Everyone's anticipating, yes, it's going to get passed today, and then no, nothing. Right? Wednesday came, then Minister Quantrill wasn't there at first. She was in New York City, so then she makes an appearance. She gets in there, makes an announcement, a speech, and then that amendment, she turned it down. So then back to the Senate it goes. It's like, oh my gosh, like, and now people are saying, like, how much is it going to be? I had a meeting recently with our minister in BC, with Jeff Leggett, Sonia, and myself. We sat down with the minister, and so Jeff gave a kind of a guideline. We mentioned about the C-22 briefly. So Jeff says, well, the LICO formula for 2021 is 2202. Now it's for 2021. She goes, okay, well, and Jeff, we were all just stunned because we thought it was going to be the LICO formula they're going to go with and correspond with the C-22. We were informed that no, it's the market basket measure that they're going to be going with. So, which is a lot less. And she said, I'm in communications with Minister Quantrill. So that was kind of where that conversation ended on that one.
Like, that's the technical stuff. Like, in regulation, any government can change that. So you might have a new government will come in and make it stronger. Another government will come in and make it weaker. This is why we didn't like this regulatory environment for some of the stronger language. But I even noticed, like, you're not going to eliminate poverty. They went from the wording to, like, now you're going to reduce poverty for working age people. And that was the other thing too. Even if they're using the market basket, there's got to be something else that they're going to, in the regulation, if they were serious anyway, it would be, I don't know what we would call it, but it's kind of like the cost of living of a person living with a disability, you can't compare it to like these figures, like whether it's LICO or Market Basket,
Yeah.
whether it's regional or across the country averages, and there's problems with all of it, they're all ableist numbers. That I do not know anybody who's actually done any calculating work because it is difficult. But there are categories. You could have categories for prosthetics, diabetes, Medicaid. Like you could have different categories and then add a percentage on for people. I don't know how they can be so like look you straight in the face and say that this is the number that's the poverty level, because it changes for region too. And everyone has individual needs as well that are different. In your where you're renting.
I deserve my own category.
Requirements. Yeah, sorry.
Well, what's that, Neil?
I deserve my own category, I was going to say.
Well, every now you're right, Cheryl. Though every region, the price is a lot different than every other region, right? So if they're going to be going with it, it's kind of like an ableist figure as well. You get it, but you don't get it because you don't need it.
And what do you call exactly? So someone with, and when you have dietary issues,
that's huge,
and you have certain requirements, even nutritional requirements and the supplements. Should you be taking a vitamin for whatever because you're on this medication and it depletes your vitamin A or whatever it is? Like don't they like you can't be using these same numbers, besides the kinds of, depending on the type of disability that you're trying to work around, and you need different equipment or you need cleaning supplies or whatever it is. Like there's some people that have allergies that have to stay away from certain cleaners and laundry soap. And so it's just the cost of living for someone living with a disability is even higher. And so
that's the thing. It's with our government here, which I'm pretty sure it's that way across the country. They kind of mirror, each province. It's like you got to have this condition in order to have this supplement. So if you need a vitamin supplement or something like that, you got to have this condition. It's like all these hoops that people got to jump through. Just like and just give everybody a amount, then they can buy what they need.
Yeah. And when you think about how that's got to be, because I know even when it's discussed, like the theoretical approaches to like a universal basic income,
right?
That's more along the lines of like, if you give the individual an adequate amount of money, they can use their discretion and say, I will spend it on vitamins or cleaning supplies or whatever. You don't have to categorize everything and don't assume. It's so funny how that works. Like, don't assume that people cannot manage this.
Right.
And that's where I wish if we had, like, I'm speaking in generalities about that political spectrum, but the conservative focus is, less government interference kind of thing. Well, then just give people the money, and let them do this. This regulatory environment requires a lot of resources to do this. If we just said, here is what we've agreed on, and it should be regionally, and it should be changed every so many, just like the cost of living, every so many months, sometimes it changes, or sometimes it changes every year, the cost of living, right? But there should just be this, here's an amount. The federal government will participate with the province in partnership. If you want these federal dollars as a province, if you want this money, then you can have it to do this, this, and this. And you've got to add to it. You've got to, it's a partnership. If you want us to participate, we have to do this together. There's a way they could do that.
I think
or
it's
they
important.
Could say individually that federally the government says, look, here's the money we're giving you, and it's none of the province's business.
Yeah. I do think it's important to to recognize that, people with disabilities, we are the experts on our conditions, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't pretend to know that I don't have a textbook knowledge of my cerebral palsy, but I have a textbook knowledge of my lived experience, though. And
Yeah.
as
sure.
do you, Brent.
Yeah, exactly.
And I shared on the last show that for the very first time, I'm actually having a manual wheelchair funded by the provincial government. It's the first time. I usually try to fund everything myself. But they're only funding half of it, because I guess they figure I only have a half of a disability, or I have half of cerebral palsy or something. So they say, well, because you already have a scooter, well, and the scooter, I fully funded that. I fully paid for it myself.
Well, that's why I said to you the other day, Neil,
and you don't get credit for that later.
Yeah, no.
So it would be nice if you could say, look, I've been fronting the cost for this for the last 10 years. Now I'm asking you to. So
it's just funny. Well, it's just funny the way they say, well,
there's a couple
we'll
things,
do half, but
is this an assistive devices program then, and that's provincial? So in Ontario, there's a weird thing in the assistive devices program, it's called, and you apply and you get up to 75% of the cost. But the kicker is, for something like, let's say your prosthetic leg, there's only like 2 or 3 types and measurements. Like if you need something because of the way your amputation was done, you need a certain requirement. It's not covered even.
Wow.
Which is, to me as a taxpayer, that's a waste of my resources. Because if you're going to do a program, instead of gatekeeping and only making it specific, should you not be offering it to everybody? Because somewhere the pressure is on us as a society if we don't adequately take care of people, which we're seeing now.
Yeah. And just as one example, like for me with cerebral palsy, and I'm sure I'm not unique in this, but
all of a sudden appeared out of nowhere, magic. It's like a pink unicorn. It just popped out of nowhere.
You need to get a pink unicorn cup. Yeah.
It just popped out of nowhere. It's just
No, I was going to
say, Neil. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, as somebody with a cerebral palsy, like, getting regular massage is huge for me, like chiropractic, and especially massage, like, because there's something called muscle tone. Like my body with cerebral palsy doesn't know how to relax, right? It's just always tight, like the muscles are always tight. So when I have massage done, like a full body massage, that's like the only time where my body can really relax, but it's like hugely important, right? And I get that done, and it's all out of pocket. Like I'm paying all out of pocket for that, but I can only do it, maybe like once every couple of months or something. But it would be wonderful if I could do it like every couple of weeks or once a week. But I mean, that's just not doable, right? But it'd be nice if the government could see that, to kind of prime the pump, like health dollars wise, that you're actually improving people's lives.
Yeah.
Making it better for people.
Yes.
Like when you give people
and keeping that quality of life longer, right?
Yeah, like, they put less stress on healthcare too.
Yeah, it really goes hand in hand, and I know I've that was one of the things I tried to advocate for too, and I know, like I said, I refer to Ontario a lot because I live in Ontario, right? And that's where a lot of my constituents came to me and pointed out some of the flaws in the system that we have. Like, we're not linking our strategies enough, because even though you have a municipal government, a provincial government, and a federal government that are responsible for different things, there's only one taxpayer. It comes out of one pocket. We're and we're not linking these strategies or using them efficiently. And one of the things that kind of goes back to, like you're saying about the massage for cerebral palsy, Neil, a lot of people want to be able to go swimming. It's good physiotherapy for them, for their for muscle movement. It gives them for 2 or 3 different conditions anyway, gives them mobility, and they're able to do certain things on their own. Because they're able to keep up this therapy. If you don't have a support system in place, or someone that can pay for you to be able to go to a swimming pool and do laps or something, because the swimming is really important. But the government programs look at certain things like, I think the same thing with the massage, Neil. Oh, that's a luxury, right? Yeah, a massage isn't, it's not important, right? It is important.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. I mean, it's like having public transit. It's so important to have people connect into communities so they can feel welcome within communities. And when you don't have it, and they say, oh, excuse of, oh, well, it's up to that community to provide their service. Oh, it's up to that one. And I had that recently, and I've made 2 phone calls back and forth, and they're like, well, there's no demand. So it's kind of like, well, he said, she said, pass the buck. Meanwhile, the person's now in limbo going, I just want to be able to get around and be mobile. But now you feel isolated now. And then you say, well, I can only go within geographically of where you want to go. And then you feel trapped, right? So it actually affects your whole well-being in certain ways. One of my bucket lists is, I'm working on it and make my way back east. So yeah, that would be something. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, good.
Are you going to do the Anne of Green Gables tour?
Well, I would actually probably do a Breaking with Brent segment and a broadcast live and doing the show on the road. Anne of Green Gables tour, it'd be interesting. But no, I pit stop in Ontario for sure. That is one of my areas I'm looking at. And,
well, these are the kinds of things now we can imagine, or I had imagined, like we're talking about expenses and what is considered in your lifestyle and what's necessary. Like, I'm sure those kind of discussions had to be had with the senior bureaucrats and the expertise around the table that are preparing for legislation. This is coming. Why you don't wait till the last minute? So I really don't know how they're going to measure the amount. I just thought, and a lot of people did, as you guys had mentioned earlier, about when we had the pandemic and we saw how that was rolled out
with the CERB, how quickly
right away up. Looking at CERB and saying, you know what, we're going to give you what was it, $2,000 a month?
Yeah, because that was the most normal amount, and they got it done within no time at all. Within 1 week, it was out there. And I remember though, Neil and Cheryl, like watching the news every day, anticipation. They're going to mention people with disabilities, Canadians with disabilities.
I know.
Waiting, and then Justin Trudeau would kind of put it off another day.
Nothing.
And then mention seniors, and then he'd mention children, and it was like, okay, well, we're coming next. And I'd watch it every day. I used to call it. Sonia would say, "Oh, Justin Trudeau is on." I said, "Oh, the Justin Trudeau show. Oh, goody. Let's have my breakfast and watch the show." And waiting. And I thought, okay, wait a minute, like there's something going on here. And that's when I realized later that year, that's when I then approached Neil and I said, you know what? We're going to launch a show here. Like, I'm going to be bringing people together because this is, I could see the scenario what's happening, Cheryl. And that's why how it came to be now. It's like, I was too much BS for me. Like, I thought, you're just delaying, right? And
and they came.
You're right. It is so frustrating even now. The idea of this, this emergency payment, the DERB, as people are calling it. If we're seeing how long that it's going to take to roll out a Canada disability benefit, they are going to need to do something interim, and I would love to see that. I know they're gone for the summer, but we could be really pressuring our MPs so that come fall, they're prepared to roll out DERB for a period of time. I know it's for a lot of people think, oh, you're really irresponsible when it's somebody else's money, Cheryl. You just want to, well, look at, you did it for the pandemic. You left people with disabilities out. They need this money now. They need something now to relieve this immense pressure until this Canada Disability benefit comes in. Like, you're not paying attention if you don't believe this.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like a year and a half, could be up to 2 years.
It could be like at least a year and a half, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, till somebody.
Well, they're saying the 18 months now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and people are already suffering now, so I would not want.
Yes.
At that point,
even if it was a year, let's say it was in 1 year. Let's say tomorrow they get the regulations done, like for 6 months, even like best case scenario. Like you said, Brent, like people are hurting right now.
Right now. Exactly.
You could be saying, we're going to give you money, like $500 a month or a week even, and they don't realize how much difference that would make until a Canada Disability benefit comes in. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air.
Well, when
they could have done that. I mean, for the grocery relief, that was too little for regular grocery items. Like, this is not out of the ordinary to go to the grocery store. And I think now the grocery relief they sent for qualifying families is like $150 or something. It's not enough. It's not enough. And the problem with that, when you say it's not enough, is, okay, then I'm whining, or I'm a critic, or I'm not appreciative, right? Yes, every little bit helps, but when you're taking all these resources to roll something out, you might as well do it right. And then it comes back to your healthcare costs and your quality of life, and all these things improve.
It really does. It really does, because it actually puts it without the resources, it puts more strain on our healthcare system, which is already in a crisis already.
Yeah.
And it's just the person's well-being, and then they get to a state where now they're developing more conditions that they didn't have before. So really, like, at the end, just give people the resources so that now they can prosper. They can put money back into the community that they live in. They can help small businesses. They can help themselves, better themselves in so many ways, and just be like every other Canadian.
And we're talking about needs, right? We're talking about needs now. So when we talk about low, like that poverty line, and what would be a low income level that's just above the poverty line, and when people talk about that, I do hear a more discussion about that in social media than I hear about, let's talk about excess. Let's talk about what's more than enough when someone has excess. And you are talking about like those kind of luxury goods that are not basic needs.
Right.
Here we are talking about someone, an extra $12 a week. They would actually it wouldn't be enough, but we would appreciate it, because with $12 more a week, I could buy fresh produce every week.
Exactly.
Like, people have shared those kinds of examples with me, even though, like, someone said to me, even though I'd love to have an extra $1,000 a month, if I had an extra $200 a month, I could put gas in a vehicle. I could, like, they're sharing really tangible things that are, to me, like basic needs. And we don't hear enough about. We always hear about basic, like when people are hurting, but we don't hear enough about like all these excesses that other people that are at this wealthier level, and they're worrying about things like, I don't know if they even bother to get these Rolex watches repaired, or if they just bring them in. Like, you have, when you talk about, and I think we do need to have more talk about excess. We need to talk about what is enough. And when we talk about what is enough, helps us to understand what a basic need is as well for people, right?
Well, when people can't even say, buy laundry detergent, they gotta wash that out by hand. I mean, wow, like there's a problem. I know I had so many messages I would get of someone said, could you please push for DER, Brent? Could you please? I said, there's MPs that I am in direct contact with constantly, and they're posting their messages on social media. I said, watch their posts. I said, it's hard to keep following. I said, each message. I said, so just watch for them, and I would send it over. Well, look at her post. I mean, MP Benita Zarello, for instance, she's hammering on DERB, Mike Maurice. I mean, there's so many of them. MP Peter Julian. I mean, there's so many of them that are really keen of wanting to get the help for people.
I think that's what we have to do is amplify those voices on social media.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, those are just examples, but I mean,
those are because I don't know. I guess we have to do that more. No, because I'm just befuddled and really shocked that we're in this situation.
Me too.
Here we are, summer 2023, and we're still trying to have hope and figure this out. And hang on, everybody, it's coming. Hang on.
And the one thing I wanted to say as you're saying all this too is like, I've worked for 20 years, and I know, Brent, you have too. You've worked a lot too. But all the time I was working, I just assumed that the government was taking care of the disabled, right? I mean, I've been disabled my whole life, like since birth. I've been disabled my whole life. But even when I was working and not on assistance, I just assumed, like when I'd see somebody on the street, in a wheelchair or whatever, I'd say, oh, yeah, the government's taking care of them. And like, that's me talking like somebody that has a disability. I thought that. So if I thought that, you can imagine how many like people that never had a disability think that as well, that they just assume the government's taking care of everyone. And
I got into that same situation, Neil, where I would argue with my mom many decades ago. And I'd be working full time. I was actually working for the government at the time. I had a contract for 2 summers in a row. Then my job actually got, I wanted to go back, and the catch was, well, you had to be going back to college. Okay, I wasn't going back to college. I had completed what I was doing. And when the job wasn't needed anymore because they all went digitalized. So your job no longer was needed anyway. So if I wanted to go back, and I couldn't believe it at the time, Cheryl. I mean, they were paying me, minimum wage was like $4.75 at the time. I was getting paid $15.03 an hour. I mean, at that, so you can imagine, I was like, whoa, like, what am I doing with this? I saved. So I was working there doing that full time. I was working for the Ministry of Advanced Education and Technology. And I saved. I bought myself a mountain bike. I saved up so my mom could actually go away. She wanted to go away to England. So I sent her off. I got her a ticket. Like I did these things, and I bought things that we needed for the household. I bought things for myself, and I just felt that pleasure of being able to provide for myself and to my mom, because my mom brought me up as a single mother, and she had a hard time going through all the hard times, right? So I knew the dollar. And when I didn't have that anymore, I then had to go back to my regular job because I had taken a leave of absence to do this contract. So I came back and I didn't have the same shift again. I wasn't really demoted, but the other person didn't want to give it up. It was an agreement saying, well, if they want to switch, they didn't want to. I then realized that the company was then folding. They were actually changing ownership. So it was like, you either take part-time, because they didn't want me full-time. I needed the money. So my mom said, well, you know what, like, you're having a hard time now. Like, there are certain things in the restaurant that I was working I couldn't do. And so I realized that, okay, there was an issue. My mom then said, Brent, I think it's now time for you to apply for disability. No, I said, no, I'm good. I'll push myself. I'll do more and more. And I realized that my disabilities were starting to interfere in certain other sectors. And my mind kept saying, no, Brent, it's okay. So I went and had a meeting. And so the worker, who was my mom's worker, who was handling senior supplement, was my worker and said, Brent, I think your mom's right. We just filled out the application and we'll send it to your doctor. He'll get this all done. And I said, well, my mom goes, don't worry. How does this work? He'll be well taken care of. It's a pension. It'll be well taken care of. Be well taken care of. I missed that cutoff, Neil, when they had the pension versus.
I did too. Yeah.
I missed it because my doctor hadn't got to it in time. There was too much paperwork.
I was still working at the time. I had no idea about the pension thing. Yeah.
But I was always told, my mom and the worker said, don't worry, like they'll take care of you. Like you're well taken care of. So we were both under that belief. And I always thought the person was well taken care of, but it's legislative poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why it is that so many people think other people are content because these systems are broken. Don't get hurt at work.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt at work. The workplace insurance board, like that, there's all kinds of flaws in these systems. Like they're set up, the way they're set up, it's so that you are inadequate. So when they talk about abuse of these systems, I don't know anybody who would actually have a way or a means to take advantage of the system that doesn't deserve to be on it. Because it's so little, you live, so it's so difficult, and the reporting mechanism. And if somehow you are abusing the system and you're getting away with it, you do have some legitimate issues then for you to not be able to work. Like I don't know that it actually helps when when I made the comment about our premier here saying, all these people are abusing the system. And that is absolutely not true. And the kind of abuse that you take when you are on the system is actually what we really need to be talking about more. This pressure, this constant pressure. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health to always have that constant pressure.
When they give you a form and you got to fill a form out saying, have you been incarcerated within the last 30 days? I mean, yes or no. It's like, really, you're giving that same form to a person with disabilities who's struggling, and they got to fill it out, yes or no answer, if you have income to declare. If you don't, they don't require you to send it in. But if you have something to declare, but I mean, that question is on there all the time. And I know that the one senator mentioned in the Senate just recently, I saw it on my news feed. I'll send it over to you. I'll direct message it over to you. But Senator Kim Pate said that the system, how it was designed, it wasn't designed for persons with disabilities. The provincial systems were not designed once upon a time for persons with disabilities. And it's over time, over decades, the governments just haven't tweaked that up and modernized the policies within it. They just kind of status quo, let it go. And now here we are.
Yeah. And we're at this crisis point now. And for so long, this relying on charity and relying on this concept of charity, when these are opportunities every day with everything that we know, all these testimonies, right? That came from C22, like, we've seen the work has been done. The expertise is out there.
Yeah,
you do not have to start from scratch. You can see the best practices in other jurisdictions and other countries.
Yeah,
we see how people are doing this. I think there was some really excellent testimony, and I can't believe that we as a country, I'm saying we're not able as a country, as a society, to at least say, you know what? We've got to give people DERB until that point.
Yeah, and the other part too, Cheryl, is like when the bill was introduced, they call it working age from 18 to 64. Now there's so much information out there of people saying, well, yeah, my disability doesn't end at 64. It turns 65. Provincial says you're not disabled anymore. You lose age, or you lose PWD or ODSP. But now, hey, you get to have GIS or OAS and, all those other supplements kind of coincide with each other, CPP. But now CPP, oh, well, we're going to claw that off or this and that. But you don't have a disability according to the government. Like, you're now just like a regular senior, but your disability is still there. Now the Canada Disability Benefit apparently is not going to go with those people unless they're going to somehow intertwine it and extend it. I think there might be a discussion on that as over the next 2-3 years as they're tweaking it, I think, to kind of maybe integrate that in. Because there's an individual, I'm not going to say who is, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And he said magically his disability disappears. And he's 60.
Like pink unicorns, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and to me, it's like, and if that was me, like, I would feel, wow, I'm excluded from this new Canada Disability Benefit. So, it's sad, right? And that's why I keep advocating to keep pushing and saying, no, we need to include everybody. It doesn't matter what age you are, all the way through, all the way from a toddler, all the way up till, until the time comes. I guess easy way of working. So,
yeah. And I guess, and there's so many there's so many aspects to it when you talk about, like, C22 is a huge part of it. This Canada Disability Benefit is a huge part of it. But we touched on, just in our conversation, how woefully inadequate our public transportation system is. How woefully inadequate the staffing levels are for people to be able to navigate. They need system navigators for these programs for people with disabilities as well. That's what I felt like my constituency office did. We did a lot of system navigating. And these should be, as we're moving towards precarious work in this gig economy, and there's more and more, we need to be focusing on, when the government's focusing on creating good paying jobs, they need to be focusing on their staffing levels in their offices when they are making these announcements, making sure that you have that adequate staffing. What else? Just off the top of, one of the things that happened, I think it was after the Accessible Canada Act, and then you mentioned it just a minute ago about the senators and the definition, and Neil had kind of mentioned it too. We didn't talk about that yet. But look at the big deal it was. You signed on to the CRPD as a country.
Right.
You're not going to use their definition.
Yeah.
Wow.
For that, that was like, did you not? I like, that blew my mind, and how crazy that was. Then it went to the Senate. That was one of the things the Senate stuck to. It said, let's deal with this. And so that was good. That got to stay anyway. But I mean, that was a no-brainer to me. That was the thing, like,
I was following that.
There's so many things they should have. I know they should have done this, and they should have done that same thing. So then after the Accessible Canada Act was passed, and there were a lot of these things like, is it actually going to implement the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities? Doesn't really look like it. A lot of this looks like it's a gesture, and then we did a National Building Code review came up. It comes up every 5 years. And there were advocates with expertise in the building and construction area that were saying, okay, here's a perfect chance for you to update the National Building Code so that the Accessible Canada Act is being recognized, so that real accessibility, because you guys all know, even with accessibility in each of our provinces, and an ombudsman or a tribunal, however it works in each province, for human rights commissioners, that there's, it's too bad. They're busy. Why are they busy? Because there's so many things that fall through the cracks, right?
Yeah.
To get accessibility taken not just seriously, but using that lens. That's really, really the important thing that I hope our future generations will learn as we are developing our future politicians and our future policy wonks. It's use that disability lens. You've got to apply a lens to everything that you do. It's not something separate. Same thing with the environment. They're not separate. With the environment, disability issues, they're not separate ministries to me. This is you need a commissioner or a minister, a deputy, somebody with that office in every single ministry has to deal with it, I think, because that just shows us the wasted resources. Like, you do an Accessible Canada Act, but what does that actually mean for the person who is physically not, I'll say a wheelchair because that's the most obvious one. In my city, we still have we still have barrier curbs. They're not mountable curbs. We still have all these other, like, people need to see results, right? Is this going to change their life? It didn't. Accessible Canada Act hasn't to this point, like, shown any, like, you see the world is changing. People thought maybe with the Canada Disability benefit, we're going to start to see some changes because I'll have some financial relief. And then to find out, it's going to come in a year's time. It's tough.
Yeah, a year or a year and a half, or, who knows. And I mean, one good thing that was actually one of the amendments, that was good is that it's going to automatically go to people on provincial disability, which I was really excited about that.
I was actually really impressed. The Senate did some awesome.
Mike Maurice, I had him on my show one day, and there was a lot of amendments, and he passed, and that was one that he was really thrilled about, because that was one thing that I know that you and I talked about when I had you on the show too. We were wondering, well, is it going to automatically go? And we weren't sure at the time. And I asked Mike one time too, and he says, I don't know. I'm going to keep pushing them, Brent. And until they go, I think he wanted to say some other words, maybe go green until people go
it makes very, right? When it makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, they wouldn't let it go. They kept hammering at it, and I'm glad that they did. And the part that's really mind-boggling too is, Minister Cointreau knows that the system, all the provincial systems, are so archaic, and they failed people with disabilities. I mean, as we know, I mean, they were designed not to include people with disabilities, just people on welfare or income assistance, and I guess terminology, whichever province they're in.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way, because I mean, when they were designed, they should have been designed. I was thinking about this morning. When these systems were designed, did the politicians way back when, I mean, who knows when they were designed, did they not think that people are not going to have disabilities in their life? I mean, they had disabilities, but they were just ignored, and so I'm glad
we were just developing. Listen, there's so many reasons why, of course, you wanted to evolve. And when they were designed, they were designed during a time when we didn't even have full human rights addressed.
Yeah.
And medical care and the kinds of things services that we have now, even our monetary system, our banking system. There was a time, if you didn't have money, but you raise some eggs, raise some chickens, you could trade your eggs for something else. Like, we can't live like that anymore.
No, I know.
You have to pay. Like, no, it's true. A lot of these systems that were brought in place during a time when it was still, these were very exemplary situations where you were going to have to deal with these things. Now, no, like, we're in a different time now, and we have to keep evolving. And when we don't evolve, it actually, going back to what we said earlier, it's actually costs our system more when we do not deal with these things properly.
Yeah, it's kind of like food banks, right? I mean, when after the World War, they came into soup kitchens, and then gradually a food bank, a small one, came in, and then now it's like an industry within an industry, and the narrative is, and these big corporations are hiding over in the and then they're tax sheltering all this stuff, and like, wow. And I know that, I know one of the MPs, I think it was Matthew Green, he really hammers away at this, and Peter Julian, MP, Mr. Honorable Peter Julian. Actually, how they say it in the House, they're not supposed to say their actual names. You actually say, Honorable, Julian or right. But, and I'm saying on here, but, as being respectful to all of them that are fighting to hold the government to account of saying, like, tax the wealthy, the ultra rich. And it's just like, what? And it's just like they're deaf ears, and then they don't want to do that. And that money, that's, I think last time I looked, it was over $60 billion, with a B, that's been lost every year. And all that money could go in and helping so many people, like a UBI or a basic income for every single country.
Trickling up.
Yeah, we're right at the end of the hour, or top of the hour, Brent. So,
are we okay?
I was wondering. That went fast. It's a good segment.
It always fast. Because I always enjoy having you on, Cheryl, and we have such great constructive conversations. I'll have to have you back. Now
I'd love to do that
as a follow up, and I use sometimes I do 1, 2, 3 segments. So. Whenever you're convenient to come on, I'll get Neil to schedule you in. Actually, while you're on, Neil, next week is already fully booked, but the week after, nobody's going to be scheduled. I'm actually having that week off. I know he's what? You haven't told me this.
That's news to me, Brent.
Yeah, this is true. That's why I just the week after.
Listen, how about, maybe the end of July, in a month from now, would be good for me. And we could do like once a month that I can come on until you decide, she's not worth it anymore. But I think, like you said, the discussions are good. I think it's good to have these kind of discussions. And one thing we didn't talk about, I know we're at the end of the hour, but maybe you could have somebody else on and talk about it when we were talking about very quickly how a lot of us learned about Bill C-22 is when you have all these paywalled news articles, you depend on social media comments and emotion sprinkled in with some of the facts. And I really, really hope that people are paying attention to what's happening with the Online News Technology Act. It's meant to have these big corporations, these big social media corporations, pay their fair share for news because we're losing news.
Oh yeah, exactly. We are, and we're losing it big time. And the reliable sources. You should have to pay
reliable news, not the clickbait. Yes, exactly. Well, I remember I was politically astute I remember when Post Media was bought up by that American company, and all the people were making these predictions. And this is even before the movement, how social media, the algorithm, right? The search for the algorithm instead of for true facts. And anyway, so let's keep that in mind. Maybe we can have that discussion in the next time. We'll talk about how it's all intermingled, isn't it? It's all linked.
It is. And and how it actually affects people's lives. People. They live the now, right? And so DERB is what is needed out there. And so anyone watching this again, DERB is Disability Emergency Response Benefit, and it's needed now. So when you see this show, just hashtag it with capital letters DERB, and you can say DERB it, or you can do or DERB now or DERB, whatever you want to word it. Just get it out there.
Good.
Yeah, and contact your MPs, your MLAs, your MPPs. Just keep throwing it out there, and we're gonna get done. Hopefully, I'm being optimistic here. Someone probably say, "Well, Brent, you're being too optimistic." Well, it's people's lives. Lives matter. I don't want to see more people suffering and MAiD because of not having the financial support. But thank you so much, Cheryl.
Thank you. Okay, take care. Bye.
End of July. Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
Okay, we're clear. Mics are off.
Yeah, we'll just I'll see you on my end. I'll see when it ends.
Bye, guys.
Okay, bye, Cheryl. Thank you.
We'll connect closer to the end of July.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Cheryl.